Peter Vincent for more insight. He was with the U.S. Department of Justice at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, Colombia, where he coordinated nearly 500 extraditions to the United States, including several high-profile cases. So we'll start there because that's the question that a lot of people have. What do you think the odds are that he will be extradited to the United States?
Mike, good evening. To briefly paraphrase, hell hath no fury like a humiliated nation state. And both Mexico and the Mexican people were humiliated by El Chapo's escape in July of last year. The United States government has made no secret of its very serious interest in having him face justice in the United States. He has 8 different indictments pending against him from California to Arizona, Texas, Illinois, New York, and Miami. And the government of the United States has already indicated that they will push very strenuously for his extradition from Mexico to the United States, as they did 6 months ago.
Well, the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida sent out a statement to the press. You can run, but you can't hide, even if you are a powerful drug dealer in Mexico. Guzman escaped in July because he feared extradition. Hopefully, the United States will be his final destination. But talk to us, because you've been there on the front lines. You go through all this. It's not as easy as just, hey, let's have him come. Walk us through what has to happen.
Sure. It's actually, as you indicate, a very complicated process involving diplomatic relations between the U.S. Department of State and the Mexico Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It will involve the Prosecutor General's office in Mexico, as well as the U.S. Department of Justice, and the at least 8 U.S. Attorney's offices spread throughout the United States. There will be a formal diplomatic note that I understand is in the process of being finalized that will be sent from the U.S. Department of State to the Colombian Embassy in Washington, which will then be transmitted via old-fashioned cable to the embassy, or rather the Colombian government in Bogota, the Mexican government in Mexico City, and then there will be a negotiation over the surrender of El Chapo to U.S. authorities.
How long does all of this take? I mean, talk to me about quickly and then the longer, because a lot of these things can drag on, right?
Sure. It never happens quickly, even though countries often have incredibly good relations and a great history of exchanging information as well as prisoners and individuals for extradition. It will probably take anywhere from 6 to 9 months in this particular case. There is a long historic tension, unfortunately, between Mexico and the United States. There's a great deal of Mexico pride and ego and nationalism involved in its relationship with the United States. So there are political considerations that always come into play, especially between Mexico and the United States.
Is 6 to 9 months enough time to build another tunnel? I mean, that has to be the concern. I mean, this is a guy who's not just escaped once, but twice.
That's absolutely right. He escaped in 2001. He was on the lam for 13 years. He escaped, as you well know, just 6 months ago. They started to build that tunnel as soon as he was captured back in 2014. It took him about a year, and as was indicated, about $1 million. This is an individual with virtually unlimited resources who has ruled his own organization through bullets and through bribery. And that's why the United States feels that it's so important to get him to the United States, where the chances of his escaping from a U.S. maximum security prison, say in Florence, Colorado, are 0.
But one of the things you think about is if you're a guard at a facility in Mexico and somebody's offering you tons of money. I mean, he had to have inside help, as we know, in probably both cases. What are the concerns about that, and how do you assure that that doesn't happen again?
He certainly had inside help in both of his escapes. The first in 2001, where he was in a laundry basket, and then, of course, in this escape most recently 6 months ago, where he went down a hole underneath his shower in his jail cell and got on a motorcycle on rails and drove under a tunnel for a mile. He has always ruled with both bullets and bribes. 23 individuals in Mexico have been indicted on Mexican charges for assisting in his escape 6 or 7 months ago. The challenge really is getting him into an absolutely secure situation where individuals are not threatened or don't feel threatened, and where he cannot bribe his way out.
One final question before we let you go. What does this do in terms of a dent in the drug business in Mexico? Because just taking out one doesn't really impact things all that dramatically, does it?
Mike, I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. The fact of the matter is that El Chapo had a certain set of skills. He's very charismatic. He was very clever despite having only 3 years of formal education. And he was able to establish a pretty amazingly profitable, unfortunately, and very violent organization. This, unfortunately, is something that the United States and other countries have been dealing with for decades. It's sort of a game like whack-a-mole. In other words, he, even though he was very skilled and talented, will be taken out of the game, so to speak, especially if he is, and hopefully extradited to the United States. There'll be other individuals that will show up to take his place.
All right, Peter Vincent, always a delight having you on the broadcast. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thanks, Mike.